today's revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's podcast. Today's episode, it is Thursday, November 13th. So, the Epstein files, right? Some of us have been talking about this for some time already. I mean, some of us for almost a decade have been talking about Jeffrey Epstein and what's going on with his pedophilia ring, and there's a lot of other things that people need to understand about Jeffrey Epstein, not just his pedophilia ring and who he compromised, who he was working for. Was it Mossad? Was it CIA? Was it both? As I often say, the intelligence apparatus is controlled by the elite anyway. So people think that somehow the intelligence agencies were trying to get dirt on some of the elite people that were frequenting the island there, Little St. James. It's a convoluted mess, and people are losing sight of what it really is. And now the Democrats, so forth and so on, are using Trump, TDS sufferers, and the Republicans are trying to bury the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. So it's a two-pronged effort there, where the Democrats are using it to try to get to Trump, but also using the misdirection about Jeffrey Epstein to bury the truth about what Jeffrey Epstein represented, which was a pal of the elite. I think the best metaphor maybe would be to compare it to, if anybody have seen the Shawshank Redemption, that movie where Red is a person who can get things. I believe Jeffrey Epstein was a person who could get things, and including young women, and provide places where people could engage in sexual activity with very young women, girls, and not have it be revealed. Many people knew that Jeffrey Epstein had ties to intelligence, and they knew that the intelligence, like the FBI, who went to Epstein Island and scooped up all the information he had, all the tapes and whatnot, they knew that it would be buried and that they wouldn't have to worry. There are a lot of other things, and if you look into the relationship with Bill Gates, and people like Larry Summers, it wasn't just about young women. It was also about technology, and particularly it was about the future. So Jeffrey Epstein knew what was going on in society, in high society, and high society's view of the future and what the future they were manifesting. So the thing with Donald Trump is really a sideshow. Like I said, they're looking at it as a win-win. We could sink Trump with it, and at the same time, we can bury the truth about Jeffrey Epstein, what he was doing, and who were his clients, etc., which we're kind of really never going to know. So let's get into the headlines for today, November 13th. 2025, this Thursday. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, share the podcast, leave a comment. Let's read the news. First headline up is the breaking news here from Just the News. It's over. Trump signs resolution ending record 43-day government shutdown. The shutdown isn't really over, won't end till maybe Friday, tomorrow, or possibly over the weekend. So this is a record day, record shutdown of the United States government, really protracted by the Democrats, probably started by the Democrats. I mean, the Republicans had a clean CR ready to go right away. They didn't want to shut down the government. But conservatives, the reason that most shutdowns, government shutdowns in the United States have been precipitated by the Republican Party is because conservatives don't care if the government shuts down. It gives them an opportunity to cut cost and to save money. The unfortunate thing about shutdowns, though, it really puts a damper on the stock market particularly, but also the economy as a whole. All right, let's get to the story at hand here. Wall Street Journal, Democrats release new Epstein emails referring to Trump. Now look at this subhead here. After White House accuses Democrats of cherry-picking messages, Republicans release a cache of more than 20,000 pages. So that is the crux. The Democrats, it wasn't accusing, the Democrats didn't release the Epstein files. They did cherry pick a few messages and then redacted Virginia Giuffre's name, which everybody knew that she was the one that they were talking about. And the fact is that Virginia Giuffre didn't recuse, but made it clear that that Donald Trump wasn't involved with sex with young women. Might have been there. He might have even cavorted with young women or women, but we're going to get into the details of the messages in just a second. As we get into the New York Times says Trump named in Epstein emails released by Democrats and Republicans. See the different take the New York Times has here. Messages in which Jeffrey Epstein discussed President Trump were among 20,000 documents posted online. President Trump called the release a distraction engineered by Democrats. It is a distraction, as I mentioned previously, but it's a calculated, tactical release for a bunch of different purposes, and that is to obfuscate the clients. And that's really what we want to get at. They want to infer that Donald Trump was a client for child sex, which he wasn't. At least that's what the evidence shows. And that Democrat donors, and a bunch of other people are implicated, and that will surely never come out. The New York Times also has the headline, after Trump split, Epstein said he could take him down. And if you know what this is talking about an exchange with the author, Wolf, who was a Democrat and was looking for, as they were very much looking for information to take down Trump. Everybody was. Everybody in the establishment was looking for anything that could take down Trump. And he baited Epstein with a peppering of questions in which he said, yeah, I could take him down. He even referred that same comment, which makes it a little confusing, to Ghislaine Maxwell, I could take him down. He was reiterating the conversation he had with Wolf. So Jeffrey Epstein cast himself as a Trump insider who wanted to leverage potentially damaging information about the president and his business dealings, according to emails with associates. He actually didn't. He didn't. He said he could because people were looking for that information. And as I just mentioned, everybody in the establishment was looking for information to take down Trump. And Trump is very smart about this stuff and was looking always to protect himself. But he liked women. There was that whole thing with Stormy Daniels. Did he have sex with Stormy Daniels? I don't know, probably. Hard to say. And again, also with some excuse to people engaged in this sort of thing. Matt Gaetz, for instance, you're not sitting there and carding, asking for ID from young women who want to sleep with you. You say, they say they're 19. You go, how old are you? Oh, 19. Oh, okay, I'm safe. And to be honest with you, that stands up in court. So, but the New York Times article goes on, and it says the conversations in the emails turn gossipy, scathing, and scheming. The messages show influential people pressing Mr. Epstein for insight into Trump, and Mr. Epstein casting himself as the ultimate Trump translator, someone who knew him intimately and was the one able to take him down. And if you look at this here, you can see that this quote, the one able to take him down, is out of context, obviously. And they provide context a little later. But I just want to say is that influential people pressing Mr. Epstein for dirt, not for insight, into how to take down Donald Trump. The messages hint that Mr. Epstein or his advisors believe they had inside and potentially damaging knowledge of Mr. Trump's far-flung properties and business dealings. Well, hold on a second. That's an important text there. Knowledge of Mr. Trump's far-flung properties and business dealings. Doesn't say anything about sex. The Democrats are using the Jeffrey Epstein hoax to try and deflect from their massive failures, in particular their most recent one, the shutdown. And this was President Trump on social media. They won't even say Truth Social here. So let's get to the emails. I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. It's cryptic language. The dog, that hasn't barked is Trump. Why wouldn't he bark? What does the barking mean? Is that complaining? ... Virginia Giuffre spent hours at my house with him. And then looks like there's 2 commas, which means there's something missing. Now, we don't know if that was edited by Epstein or somebody else. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. That's cryptic. We don't really know what it means. So it's not implication in any way. But they're trying to use what they have to implicate him. Oh, he spent hours for Virginia Giuffre. Don't forget, Virginia Giuffre worked at Mar-a-Lago. Would that somehow make hours with Donald Trump? So they want to implicate Donald Trump with that he spent hours with Virginia Giuffre. And we're going to get to the fact that Giuffre herself clears Donald Trump of any wrongdoing. So you had the victim supposedly having sex with Donald Trump, as the Democrats would like to have you think. And then Mr. Trump's presidential campaign gained traction. In 2015, Mr. Epstein asked Landon Thomas Jr., a New York Times reporter, would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? Now, he uses the word girls. Now, girls, does it mean underage? Girls? Does it mean girls as women? Does he have photos of young women with Donald Trump? Well, we never see that. Will they come out? And the point is, he doesn't say, I have photos of Donald with girls in my kitchen. So you have to look at it two ways. Would, as the reporter, would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? And of course, the reporter would probably say yes, but that doesn't implicate Donald Trump. Also, would you like photos of Donald and girls in bikinis in my kitchen? He doesn't say, would you like photos of Donald with girls in bikinis in my kitchen? So photos of Donald Trump, presumably, and girls in bikinis in my kitchen. He didn't say with. Also, right, and then the next line right there, it's unclear whether Mr. Epstein actually possessed such photos. But they put it in there anyway. Mr. Thomas has not worked at the New York Times since 2019, and Mr. Epstein never provided them. So it doesn't mean anything. Also, Mr. Epstein also told him about a time when he said Mr. Trump was so focused on watching young women, and this time it's not girls, it's young women, in a swimming pool that he bumped into a door, leaving his nose print on the glass. Now, at that point, were the young women naked? Any man, if he was walking by a pool where there were a bunch of young women naked in a pool, would probably also be focused on them. Any heterosexual man in that case. And then we're going to get into the text here. I believe Trump offers an ideal opportunity, Mr. Wolf, and this is the author, the Democrat, the liberal author. It's a chance to make the story about something other than you. In other words, eliciting information from Epstein about Trump. Then they mentioned that December, Mr. Epstein was texting with an unidentified acquaintance who wrote that they're really just trying to take down Trump and doing whatever they can to do that. Then Mr. Epstein said, it's wild, Mr. Epstein replied, because I'm the one able to take him down. But again, he's not referring to anything having to do with sex with young women. It could be, he could have other dirt on him. Who knows? And maybe an extramarital affair. Maybe an extramarital affair with an adult woman. Who knows? So even the New York Times says they don't really have anything. They admitted, as far as the photos are concerned, whether Epstein actually had any photos or not. PJ Media has the headline, Democrats released 3 cherry-picked Epstein emails, so the GOP released 20,000. 2011 email between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell in which Epstein described him as a dog that hasn't barked. Actually, that dog that hasn't barked. He noted that a victim had spent hours with Mr. Trump at Epstein's house. That doesn't really mean anything. They just could have been talking. And the characterization that it was hours doesn't indicate anything either. You know, people say things all the time that aren't true. Maybe Epstein was on drugs and his perception of time was altered. Democrats redacted the victim's name in their release, but we know exactly who they were talking about, Virginia Giuffre. As I said before, the reason for the redaction becomes clear when you learn that Giuffre was actually has said under oath, she has testified that she never witnessed Trump engage in any wrongdoing. In any case, sex with young women or anything that could be described as illegal. So Miranda Devine of the New York Post chimes in. The left is pushing another desperate anti-Trump hoax, a false Epstein smear campaign. Of course, the oversight Dems, who include such adamants to Congress as Jasmine Crockett, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib, left out crucial information that exonerated the president, instead claiming the emails raised serious questions about Donald Trump and his knowledge of Epstein's horrific crimes, but they do no such things. And then, of course, she said, in 2016 deposition, Jeffrey said Trump didn't partake in any sex with us, the girls, and never flirted with me. So we're going to get to more propaganda, also misdirection, smear, because you just heard about the BBC when they edited the documentary on January 6th. They edited together Trump's speech, which made him sound like he was egging on the violence when he actually absolved himself by saying be peaceful. That we found out the Australian broadcasting system did the same thing. But let's move on to more corrupt and frankly unethical and illegal conduct by Democrats. First, we're going to start with ex-Clinton cabinet secretary, this is Larry Summers, by the way, exchanged emails regularly with Epstein after his sex conviction. According to the Fox News, the email exchanges include banter about an unknown woman as well as discussions about politics and President Donald Trump. Former President Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who was also the president of Harvard, by the way, maintained regular contact with Jeffrey Epstein years after he was convicted on prostitution-related charges. Documents released by the House Republicans on Wednesday revealed. Among the over 20,000 pages of documents released by House Republicans was a series of email exchanges ranging from 2016 to 2019 between Epstein and Summers that suggest a cozier relationship between the two than previously known. The email exchanges include banter about an unknown woman as well as discussions about politics and President Donald Trump. Unknown woman, and we don't know whether that woman was underage or not. Larry Summers is a scumbag, despite his prowess as an economic advisor. We don't really know who that woman was. But that's not the point. The point is, this is after his sex conviction. Here's the president of Harvard, an ex-cabinet member of Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton, mind you, this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing started with Bill Clinton in an effort to take down Bill Clinton, that most of us already knew that Jeffrey Epstein was a purveyor of underage girls for sex, and that Bill Clinton frequently rode on his plane, dubbed the Lolita Express, and frequently went to Epstein's Island, presumably to engage in sex with underage girls, in which Bill Clinton had a penchant for. So unethical at the least, illegal at the most, certainly concerning. But the point is, we're never going to find out who the other regular clients of Jeffrey Epstein's child sex operation were. But there's more corruption in Democrat land. Tammy Duckworth's staffer accused of posing as lawyer in an attempt to free illegal immigrant from ICE custody. Department of Homeland Security demands answers about Edward York's alleged misrepresentation of St. Louis facility. So, Senator Tammy Duckworth, one of her staffers, illegally, mind you, posed as an attorney for an illegal alien who is in custody in an effort to get him out of jail. Who knows the relationship between Duckworth and this illegal alien? It was in St. Louis, and is Duckworth? Yeah, she is senator for Illinois. That's correct. Also, this is on the heels of this story from Fox News. Former Gavin Newsom chief of staff charged in $225,000 fraud and corruption scheme, according to the DOJ. Dana Williamson, who served as California Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff until late last year, was indicted on 23 federal counts. 23 federal counts of fraud for skimming $225,000. And I said this time and time again, every time you increase the velocity of money, in other words, appropriating billions of dollars in funding, there's always skimming going on. Now, was the chief of staff doing it for his own person? Was he doing it for the governor? Did the governor know about it and allow it to happen? We'll see during the trial, obviously. And there's more from California. Washington Times reports California revoked 17,000 commercial driver's licenses, but disputes move is over immigration concern. Now, this is obviously following the horrific crash and where an illegal alien Sikh from India was driving a semi-tractor trailer and crashed, fell asleep at the wheel, I think was drunk, and crashed into many vehicles. I think he killed 4 or 5 people. California plans to revoke 17,000 commercial driver's licenses given to immigrants after the Trump administration raised concerns about people in the country illegally receiving licenses to drive a semi-truck or bus, but Governor Newsom said it isn't the reason. Also, he's going to be running for president, so he doesn't need this stain of 4 or 5 lives on his record. Newsom said the revocations are for violations of state law, but he didn't provide specifics because it's against state and federal law to give commercials driver's license to aliens, period, and most particularly illegal aliens. But yeah, if you're an alien, you can't receive commercial driver's license, even if you're here legally. More California news is Reuters. Democrat-led states are inadvertently sharing driver's license data with ICE. Democrat-led states are inadvertently making their driver's license data available for U.S. immigration authorities through a little understood digital loophole, a group of lawmakers said. Wednesday. Not a group of lawmakers, it's NCIS. I mean, you can figure it out. The driver's license data is shared between state, local, and federal police through forces through a nonprofit organization called NIETS or NLETS. ICE and other Department of Homeland Security Homeland Security investigations have also have access to the system. The letter said the 2 agencies accounted for nearly 900,000 queries against databases in the year prior, October 1st. Of course. And that also enforces the idea that these are targeted operations, not random scooping up of people on the street, profiling. Because they use all information, as all investigative bodies do, all information at their disposal to find out who the criminals are and where they might be residing or working. But of course, the Democrats are going to try to block that, because why allow federal law enforcement officials to access information in their investigations? You're thwarting and obstructing federal law enforcement. That's a crime. Post-millennial Fuck around and find out. Border Patrol arrests illegal immigrant who protested ICE on horseback in Portland, mocked agents, declared he'd never be caught. Jesus Cayetano is now in ICE custody pending removal from the United States. Well, good. I mean, it's what do I care? So let's move on to the big ICE operation. ICE in Florida arrests 230 criminal illegal aliens in 10-day operation. And then One American News chimes in. Nome reveals immigration raid dubbed Operation Dirtbag resulted in the arrest of 150 illegal alien sexual predators. So the total was about 230. It was dubbed Operation Dirtbag, but the actual operation was Operation Criminal Return. Overall, the major immigration raid, officially named Operation Criminal Return, resulted in the apprehension of over 230 criminal illegal aliens. The illegal aliens swept up with the raid had criminal histories that included attempted premeditated murder with a deadly weapon, sexual assault, sexual battery, lewd and lascivious molestation of children, among others. Oh, that's nice. This operation was called Operation Criminal Return. Nome called it Operation Dirtbag because these individuals were sex offenders, and not just sex offenders, they targeted children. So now our kids will be safer, she goes on to say. All right, we have another follow-up on the TPUSA event at UC Berkeley. So everybody was talking about Antifa, but a far-left militant group, Students Organizing for Liberation, takes credit for disrupting TPUSA event at UC Berkeley. This is from the Post Millennial. Students Organizing for Liberation describes itself as a grassroots democratic organization to resist imperialism, Zionist, and oppressive projects at UC Berkeley and the UC system, University of California system. So I talk about this often. So if you were around during Occupy Wall Street and Occupy movement, we, whoever was protesting, understood that if you decentralize and you don't have a leader, they can't be targeted, you can't be disbanded. So Antifa's learned from that, and they try to decentralize as much as possible, and even organizing on the left, social organizers like Barack Obama and others understand that the best thing to do is have a loose umbrella group, an umbrella organization, and then have groups underneath, so it becomes whack-a-mole. And that's what they do with the NGOs. It goes whack-a-mole. So you take down or investigate one NGO and another pops up in its place, and they're all a bunch of others. And it's the same thing with the anarcho-communist movement, that they're all under the banner of anarchism or communism, and they have different groups, and whether they're under the banner of Antifa or not, they're all battling fascism. Like, they even know what that means. And I'm not even saying that corporate fascism doesn't exist, but the point is we're trying to root that out. Corporate money out of politics. Post Millennial goes on to say that the organization took responsibility in writing, saying, thank you for standing up with people of color, POC, and they have it in capitals, immigrants, LGBTQ plus, the poor, Muslims, and all oppressed people in the face of fascism. Is that what it is, really? Is it in the face of fascism? Together, we successfully delayed the action by nearly an hour and a half, forcing TPUSA to rush through the presentation. Because of the rush, we learned that UC Berkeley Chancellor Richard Lyons was in attendance and was called upon by failed parent Rob Schneider. And I like Rob Schneider. I think he's hysterical. And he hasn't succumbed to the blue Kool-Aid It's a far left militant group. They're anarcho-communist, whatever. In any case, protesting means verbally or written and with your presence. So it's not allowed to include threats of violence or lighting off smoke grenades or obviously getting into physical confrontations. Shouldn't be allowed. And the point is, anarcho-communists or anarchists in general should be investigated. And always have been. I mean, don't forget Haymarket. So this is all coming to a head because, as I reported earlier, that socialism is tightening its grip around the neck of the United States. Because this is what the agenda, the New World Order agenda calls for, is socialism for people. If you're poor and indigent or, having trouble with affordability, I think everybody has a problem with affordability. Even if you own, taxes are always going up. I just had a reassessment on my house. It doubled. So we're completely fucked. So if you think people with money don't have affordability problems either, you're mistaken. But so is the downtrodden folks that turn to the controlled opposition of socialism. It's controlled opposition. So you're getting scared out of one system, which affords you upward mobility, however hard it may be, to a system that doesn't afford you upward mobility. So don't be fooled. You might be provided with free stuff, but just like credits, whether it's with a timeshare or a Disney ticket price or whatever, that you're afforded credits, right? But those credits over time will become worth less and less, or they will just issue you less credits based on your behavior. So you have to get with the program. Socialism is not the answer. Are there answers to affordability? Sure, maybe, sure. Should we have a plan? Sure. So I'm telling you, socialism is not the answer. So PJ Media has the headline, Seattle surrender is complete. Voters choose a communist for mayor. Small businesses were priced out of the labor market. The voters chose more debasement over economic prosperity. As a result, Seattle voters have chosen Katie Wilson, a communist, technically a Democratic socialist, to lead one of the most consequential cities in the country, the yin to Zoran Mamdani's gang. As a result, Seattle's capitulation to the left is complete. Indeed. And by the way, they cheated to get her in. So here's how it works. Mail-in ballots. Your candidate, and always when they take more than a day or two to decide the election, it always goes to the liberal. Why is that? So obviously it was close race and they didn't pad the vote enough. So they had to wait days to introduce more ballots to get this communist to win. So the powers that be, whoever they may be, wanted the communist to win. Well, why is that? Well, we'll see. And you'll see, because the sovereignty revival, the revival of MAGA, or America First, or American greatness, whatever you want to call it, or the religious revival, Christian revival, whatever you want to call it, is a roadblock, or pessimistically, a bump in the road for the New World Order, which is coming, regardless, by 2030. So here's a prediction. Gavin Newsom will become president, and that'll be it. It won't be Seattle's capitulation to the left. It'll be the United States capitulation to the left. And then the conquering of the West is complete because Europe is gone, except for maybe Hungary. And the erosion of your civil rights, your individual rights will be gone, because that is the reason the West has to be taken down, is because you can't have communist overlords if the citizenry can have weapons and free speech and all these things. So out marches the excuse brigade. The Post-Millennial has the story. Joy Reid hosts CNN's Abby Phillip, who claims Mamdani and Sanders are not regular socialists, but Democratic ones. Voters are not as concerned about these labels as I think politicians are, or as politicians think that they are. So if you saw this interview was, it smacked of intelligence agency involvement. It was too polished, and that's the giveaway, is when it seems scripted and polished. And I never saw Joy Reid stay so quiet when someone was talking. She literally sat there and allowed Abby Phillip, CIA, Mockingbird, to go ahead and regurgitate the stupid line, Democratic socialists are not socialists. Here is the thing. The two sides of the spectrum are individualism and socialism. On the left, you defer to the group, ideally the all. But it never works out that way, because there's always a group that gets preference. True socialism, maybe, that everybody is created equal and everybody gets their due. Okay, maybe, whatever. But that's not the way it works out. Some groups get more because they need to enforce. Socialism needs to be enforced. It's not like a cooperative where if you want to opt in, you can opt in. If you want to opt out, you can. It doesn't work that way. On the other hand, you have individualism. Every man for himself, so to speak. But it's not without its own compassion. I mean, you have groups, philanthropic groups that help, churches that help. So it's not, and hey, I'm firmly on the right. I believe in individualism. However, that what makes me centrist is I believe in a social safety net. That someone should receive something from our tax dollars, from the government. My caveat is that it should be poor. And I'm sorry, as Jesus said, the poor will always be with us. So making someone survive is altruistic enough for me, rather than trying to bring poor people up to a middle-class standard of living through government subsidy. Shouldn't happen. You know, if you need to be subsidized because you can't put food in your mouth or put a roof over your head or put clothes on your back or your children's, I understand that. Should be help. But people game the system, including organized schemes that involve people that aren't even poor, that scam the system for, in some cases, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So Phillip went on to say, they're afraid of the left flank of their own party, referring to Democrats. And she added that the term itself is viewed as scary in politics. Well, it is, because what it does is it saps, excuse me, I can't speak today, man. It saps capital away from growth-oriented investment projects into projects that don't have a return. So as altruistic as it is to put food in people's mouths, put roofs over their heads and clothes on their back, that endeavor does not produce a return on your investment. There's no productivity or growth resulting from that. People just exist. So if they have any money that they made under the table, they pay for cable TV and they lease an Escalade or whatever. Reid responded by claiming Trump's policies amount to national socialism. Really? Is it national socialism? That's not national socialism. America First is nationalism, but it's not socialism. Right? He doesn't advocate for that. That would advocate for higher tax to pay to raise up the indigent. That's the whole thing of, it's not equality. I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole again. You can't bring the rich down to lift the poor up and then have everybody as a serf, basically. It doesn't work. You don't generate enough productivity to offset the debt that's incurred by taxing and borrowing and doing all these things. Just basic economics. So Joy Reid and Abby Phillip, I think, are included in this next story. The Federalist, most women are on crazy pills and it's bad for everyone. An entire generation of women is lost amidst engineered anxiety, chasing hollow independence while forsaking the proven anchors of marriage, family, and selfless purpose. People are insane. I mean, everybody has a little bit of mental illness. Whether you're in denial or you're not. But as I mentioned yesterday, during yesterday's broadcast, we were talking about an article from the New York Times talking about SSRIs or antidepressants that killing libido, which they want to do because they don't want you to have sex and have babies. But as I put it, that's the New York Times article seemed to be encouraging young people to have sex, so sexualizing young people, which I think is misdirection. Also, that the real worry about SSRIs is it makes people homicidal and have homicidal and suicidal ideation, which is much worse than suppressing your libido. Maybe suppressing your libido is what causes you to be suicidal. I don't know. Or homicidal or whatever. You shouldn't take pharmaceuticals, period. I mean, there is a time and place if it's going to save your life, but if it just eases your existence and manages your anxiety, mind over matter, free will, is that your mind has to control your emotions without going crazy. So the problem is overstimulation in today's society, because it goes in and it talks about cultural shifts that love women's declining mental status, a high prevalence of social media use, particularly among younger girls. And Jonathan Haidt had this book in which he argues that, called The Anxious Generation, steep increase in depression and anxiety in young girls. Ages 8 to 22. My God, 8-year-olds taking antidepressants. Holy shit. Beginning somewhere between 2008 and 2010, corresponds with the mainstream adoption of the smartphone and social media use. And that's what I said. It's the same thing with school shootings. Didn't start before the internet. That's the point. It's mind control. The internet is mind control. Social media, the smartphone protected the internet's mind manipulation techniques. That started with the television. Actually started with radio, but Increased self-harm episodes, emergency room visits, and suicide rates also spiked around the same time in various countries. Demonstrating this is not a problem unique to the United States, social media has helped spread the lies of feminism along with New Age culture of self-help, neither of which seems to have improved women's mental stability. Goes on to say, the ease of self-diagnosis combined with the increased accessibility to SSRIs has led a large number of young women to pursue medical intervention for their problems. Approximately 1 in 4 adult women in the United States report taking at least one psychiatric medication in the past year, according to a recent CDC National Health Interview Survey. People are fucking crazy. It's the internet, for the most part, making them crazy. Go outside, touch grass, get your camping gear. Or if you don't camp, go take a hike in the woods. Take a day off and hike in the woods all day without your phone. Because that's the thing. Once people got away, people said, oh, in front of the screen all day on my computer. Then came in the smartphone, and then you're taking your computer everywhere you go. And I see people can't look away from their phone for more than 5 minutes. I sit somewhere where there's a crowd, and I watch people, and I look at them, and I count. I look at my watch, if I wear a watch, or I just count, and I see how long is it going to be before someone whips out their phone. Usually, it's not more than 5 minutes. All right, so PJ Media, What Makes Things Affordable by Ben Shapiro. Is this the Ben Shapiro? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Government interventions are generally designed to increase demand through subsidies, thus increasing prices, or they're designed to reduce supply through restrictions and regulation, or both. This is because free markets, though competition and its consequent efficiency seeking, generate more supply and more efficiency. To achieve affordability, politicians must be deprived of power. Tell the voters that if only politicians are given more power, they can fix all the problems. That's what I'm talking about, is creating chaos, whether it's crime or affordability or what have you, just makes you go to government and say, help us. Government can't help you in the problems of your own agency. You have to feed yourself. You have to clothe yourself. You have to shelter yourself. The whole welfare system was there for if you had a family or whatever, or you lost your job unexpectedly and you needed time to get your shit together, that those cost of living expenses would be taken care of for a short period of time while you get back on your feet. But people game the system generationally. You have generations of inner city people. We've always been on welfare. We've always been Section 8. We've always been on SNAP. Story goes on to say, as I've often noted, officially and obviously, restricting the supply of labor drives up wages in a protected industry, which makes life more affordable for those particular workers in those particular industries, at least temporarily. But at the other end of the production pipeline is more expensive products, and those prices are passed on to all consumers. If those products become uncompetitive, consumers turn to other suppliers. Think of tariffs, those impoverishing precisely the industries targeted for protection, or forcing businesses to offshore, turn to technology substitutes for human labor. None of this is an argument for unfettered immigration. In other words, you have to understand is that Trump is trying to protect American labor, which is going to increase wages, as Besant often says. Prices never come down. Devalued currency or inflation never gets revalued. You would have to take money out of the money supply, which never happens. So the only way for affordability to happen is for wages to go up. And that happens when you change jobs in an inflationary cycle. If you're stuck in the same job, there's no way you got a 23% raise. And the problem, again, is growth, also nationally. Growth has to be spurred. When the economy is doing well, everyone does well. Not necessarily the stock market, but the overall economy. And what do we need right now? Well, we need a Fed rate cut. This lowers borrowing costs. More people borrow. That increases growth, wealth, and then jobs. Wall Street Journal, the Fed is increasingly torn over a December rate cut. Why? As data went dark, inflation hawks pushed to pause rate cuts at a contentious October meeting. The divide may not end soon. So the Fed and people on the board aren't even telegraphing a rate cut. So they're artificially suppressing the economy on purpose. Why? To drive in more socialists. People suffer, chaos produces suffering. Suffering people turn to the government as their savior, as in many socialist systems, and government gets bigger, and people rely more on government. Government gets more powerful, and there may or may not help you. Washington Times has the article, U.S. bishops officially ban gender-affirming care at Catholic hospitals. Good news. Also, just the news, efforts to remove fluoride from drinking water make steady progress amid mainstream headwinds. If you didn't know, fluoride in drinking water, based on what was concluded as scientific evidence of the related health risks, and mitigate what the court says is an unreasonable risk to children's IQ. We've known this for some time, that fluoride in the drinking water, industrial fluoride, not natural fluoride, is put there to make people stupid or malleable or both. It was early 1930s, 1940s mind control. Before we had things like the internet, we had fluoride in the water and fluoridated fluoride lights. I think there's a connection between the two, but that's a crazy conspiracy theory. If you know how fluoride lighting works, fluorescent. You know how fluorescent lighting works, you'd understand. Because there's also, it's a flicker rate that's imperceptible, but it's the fluoride, the fluorescent light. And if you've been fluoridated through the water system, it produces a sedative effect. Anyway, now they just put SSRIs directly into the water supply, which they're there in trace amounts. Right, the Wall Street Journal, two senior Ukrainian ministers resign amid widening corruption probe. Investigation has put Zelensky in political bind, with Russia advancing and members of his inner circle accused of embezzlement. Ukraine is corrupt. The Ukrainians are corrupt? No. Say it ain't so. That was the whole thing behind the anti-corruption prosecutors that were ousted because they were looking into Burisma, where Joe Biden's son had a no-show board seat. It's part of the corruption probe. It's just, people just don't get it. Why is 30% of the military funding and military hardware doesn't even make it to where it's supposed to go? It's endemic. In Ukraine, and really Slavic countries in general. Like I said, and I don't put it against the Slavic people, they just look at it as a way of life. And in a lot of places, they look at bribery and corruption as just the way things work. They don't, it doesn't necessarily have a bad connotation. Just the way things are. I mentioned this before. This is the New York Post. Aussie broadcaster ABC deceptively edited Trump January 6th speech, much like the BBC did. Same journalistic sin. They just clipped out the part where he said, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. The funny thing is that then ABC, not the American Broadcasting Company, but Australian state, this is a state broadcaster. The quote in question was from President Trump, was used accurately by ABC, did not change the meaning of the section of the speech, and did not mislead the audience. Sure you did. The whole point, and Australia has been captured by the Chinese anyway. I don't know why we're still providing them nuclear submarines to give to the Chinese. The program was consistent with ABC's high standards and factual reporting. Not really. If you didn't say peacefully, that's the whole point. You have to air the part, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. If you don't put that in, you're misleading your viewers. Is because it was a rally where nearly 1 million people showed. Only a fraction of those people went to the Capitol, where there was another rally planned, if you didn't know, where Trump was supposed to speak again. And then those crowds that showed up at the Capitol were goaded into attacking the Capitol instead of going to the rally around the other side of the Capitol. And I'm sure none of that was in the documentary. So it's not truthful. And I don't know if they used the word insurrection or armed insurrection like our media did. That's also false. Rounding up here, the Wall Street Journal, companies begin to see a return on AI agents. A widespread belief that businesses are still waiting on agents to prove their worth might not last much longer. So if you didn't know what this is what I said it always was. AI is taking jobs. It's always been reported that corporations that's the reason they're developing AI, is to use labor, to displace human labor. That's why they're doing it. To displace human labor. And now AI agents are seeing a return. Because when did they implement the AI agents? About a year ago, maybe 2 years, 18 months ago. So now they're seeing a return. So you make the initial investment. You've laid off your employees. Now you've paid for your investment. And now you're seeing the return, which means the dividend checks or the increased dividends will start going into the shareholders. What follows? Wall Street Journal again, inside Microsoft's new AI super factory. Tech giant is building out huge data centers among most advanced in the world as it rushes to meet demand for AI computing power. For the agents that will displace human labor. Specifically to increase dividend. Isn't that fucked up? I think it is. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. I appreciate you. Yeah, crazy. But people don't understand that what is taking shape is the new world agenda is marching on, regardless of Donald Trump or anything, is that individual sovereignty, individual rights, and state sovereignty, I mean the nation state, the United States sovereignty, and the sovereignty of the West is being eroded for a one world government, new world order, et cetera, and AI is really all part of that. So you got to understand that that's where we're going, regardless of Trump or whatever, MAGA, America First, or the assertion of the traditional Republican Party. And just as a caveat, I've said time and time again since 2015, whether on the left or on the right, the electorate is strictly anti-establishment, and the establishment is hanging on as much as they can because it's their agenda. The New World Order agenda is their agenda, and they need to make it happen for their puppet masters and the corporation. So we have to understand that that's where we're going, as much as we don't like it. Don't forget, you're under attack psychologically and biologically to get you out of the way of the New World Order agenda. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, live stream, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Rumble and other platforms. So join me every day. Appreciate you coming by and listening, and hopefully you go out there and act as well. At least use your free speech to tell folks what's coming. There's a freight train coming right at you, and within 5 years, we're going to be totally fucked. So you got to do something. We have to stop the agenda, and that's progressivism, particularly technological progressivism, but cultural progressivism is alongside that. We have to stop that and be clear-eyed about scientism and a technological authoritarianism, totalitarianism that's coming, and you don't see it coming, and by the time most people will notice, it's too late. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Respect.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
This is a conspiracy.
The New World Order.
I'm an American. I have rights.